Hello my dear students, today we are here to discuss and analyze UPSC Prelims 2026 GS1 paper. Specifically, now we will look into the questions coming from Polity and Governance part. But before that, let me give you a glimpse as to how the paper pattern has changed and how the questions or the number of questions coming from different subjects has slightly been altered as well by UPSC this year. Yes, if you look at the number of questions from polity the previous year and compare them with the questions coming this year, you could see that literally number of the questions have been halved. The prominence of polity has been reduced this year, and the questions that they have asked in the polity also, the nature of the questions seems to be slightly more difficult as well. If you look at the economic questions, it is more or less the same, and history, specifically coming from modern history, reduction here, geography, massive reduction can be witnessed in geography, the number of questions coming from geography. On the other hand, the questions coming from international relations have seen a jump, that is twice. Science and tech has again been given a lot of questions, literally going from 6 to 16. Environment seems to be the same. UPSC has placed environment or given environments the same prominence that it had given the last year as well. Current affairs again seems to be area where the UPSC has reduced its prominence this year. Speaking about the current affairs directly being asked in the question paper, they have been reduced. And you could see ancient and medieval going from 9 questions to literally 15 questions. So if I take modern history, ancient and medieval put together, we can see that the number of questions that history has commanded this year is literally beyond 20 questions. Alright? Okay. One more startling fact that we have seen in GS paper 1 is the arrival of ethics questions directly in the prelims question paper itself. As this had been a surprise for a lot of students who are attempting this year's question paper. Okay, my dear students, let us now understand the kinds of questions that were asked in polity subject in this year's prelims GS question paper. This was one of the questions. If you look at the question, this question is slightly off the pattern that the UPSC generally asks. Here they have given as Mr. X and then the question follows. This is more of an ethics based question, ethics oriented question. If you go through this entire mark, they would ask you what can this X as an officer, as a serving officer would have done. Alright, so the question is, which of the following principles of public administration was the most strongly demonstrated by Mr. X actions? If you go through the question, the answer would come out to be accountability. But this is an unconventional question. Students would not have anticipated such questions. So this was a surprise in this year's examination paper. Alright. Moving further, one more question on the similar lines. Forget about answering the question, attempting the question. If you look at the length of the question itself, yes, you would have to spend a lot of time in just reading and going through this question. This in itself is a huge drawback. UPSC wanted you to spend a lot of time in going through this question. Forget about being right or wrong here. The mere fact that you had to spend a good 2 to 3 minutes in just one question and understanding the question itself was a difficult thing to do. Okay. Here once again, this is more tilted towards your ethics paper integrated with polity. Here you have again a question related to district where you have a lot of tribals. You have certain land being allocated by the government for solid waste management, and then the tribals are not happy. The question ultimately asks you what could have you done in this case. All right. So here this is more subjective per se, and the right answer here according to us would have been the first one, 1, 3 and 4. All right. As I said, this is slightly more subjective in ethics integrated with polity question. Again, something that is unconventional. Moving to the next question. Again, the same Mr. X. UPSC seems to have been fascinated with Mr. X this year. Alright, you would find questions asking Mr. X. There was one question where Mr. X was the Nobel Prize winner this year. So there are a lot of questions with Mr. X being repeated in this year's question paper. please mind it. This is a pattern that is changing. You have to be very careful about this particular aspect. Alright, here again Mr. X comes in. He is a mid-level civil service official working in the urban development department. Ultimately, this is all about his knowledge about a contractor whose performance is shoddy or poor, and they ultimately ask you what is the best possible option for Mr. X to do when he has an understanding, or he or she, sorry, has an understanding of what is known to them. So according to us, the best possible answer here was this 3. Yes, the answer should have been 3. That is, propose a limited disclosure to the oversight committee while keeping the information confidential from the public for the time being. Alright. Again, an unconventional question. Again, ethics integrated with your polity. Alright. Once again, we come across X. A lot of X's this year in the question paper. This is a question that is integrated with your polity, in the sense Article 13 was asked. Per se, this was not a difficult question to answer. If you had learnt about Article 13, if you had carefully gone through what Article 13 covered, this question would have been doable. Like, it asks you, there are 2 individuals, X and Y, who are debating as to what is the magnanimity of Article 13. What does Article 13 cover? Yes, one says it covers the term law, covers customs and usage within the territory of India, whereas the other says that it is very comprehensive. It includes ordinances, orders, and even rules and regulations. Yes, whatever this individual says about Article 13 or law, particularly including ordinances, orders, and even rules and regulations, is absolutely true, because this is what Article 13 stands for. And the other individual debating, who is not happy, per se, speaking about Article 13 also including customs as well as usage within the territory of India, even this is true in a way. Article 13 is one of the most comprehensive articles written in the Constitution of India. Yes, the term law mentioned in Article 13 is very comprehensive. So the question here, according to the question, the answer here should have been C. That is, the views of both X and Y are correct, because what they have asked here, based on the above, select the correct conclusion from the options given above. Yes, both seem to be correct on their own way. Moving to the next question. Consider the following statements with reference to the Constitution of India. In this question, if you look, the statements, all of them begin from, there is no article in the Constitution, there is no article in the Constitution, there is no article in the Constitution. This is a question that was meant to test your knowledge and confuse you. Yes, all of them began with the same statements here. Right? If you go through the question and if you have some understanding of what these options are speaking about, alright, the answer should have been, there is no correct statement whatsoever here. Moving to the next question. Now, this is a question which speaks about scheduled castes and scheduled tribes in India. This is a question that could have been answered, by the way. It was not that difficult. You could have used your elimination methods. The first option here states that provisions regarding the administration of tribal areas in the states of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram, that is mapped, are given in the 5th schedule of the Constitution of India. Here, if you have gone through the topics, you know that the provisions related to these 4 states have actually been mentioned not in the 5th, but in the 6th schedule. So this option should have been wrong. Yes, just the mere knowledge that it was not 5th and 6th should have eliminated this option. Some tribes, if you look at the question here, option here, some tribes of India are entitled to exemption from paying taxes on certain incomes. There's ambiguity here, some and certain. Of course, if you take a sample space of all the tribals across India, you have different per se rules and regulations applicable to tribals in different states. So if such questions are being asked, some and certain, this option must be true, because it would be applicable in some part of India for sure. Moving on to the next option, the Constitution of India provides for reservation of seats in the panchayats for women belonging to the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. This is a very known fact. Okay, even this was to be true. So the option here, according to the question, should have been that there are two correct statements, which includes statement 2 as well. Next, moving on to the next question. Consider the following statements in respect to the questions asked by the members of the Parliament of India. 3 options we have, 3 statements we have, and we have to choose the correct answer based upon the following conclusions. Alright, it says unstarred questions are those which a member desires an oral answer in the House. Unstarred questions desire written answer. So this should have been absolutely wrong. It's a clear-cut fact. Starred questions are those which a member desires a written answer. Absolutely wrong once again, because here starred questions demand an oral answer. So these should have been interchanged. An unstarred question desires written answer and a starred question desires oral answer. So both of them are wrong. No supplementary questions can be asked on an unstarred question. This is the only option that is right here. And these are absolutely fact-based questions. You do not have to apply your mind here. If you know what an unstarred and a starred questions are, the answers would have been really very easy here. So because only 3 is correct here, so the option here should be C. There is only one correct statement. Moving further, once again a question on scheduled tribes and scheduled castes. 2 questions this year coming from a chapter on scheduled tribes and scheduled castes. Alright, here the question is all about the Committee on Welfare of Scheduled Tribes and Scheduled Castes in the Parliament of India. This could be associated with the Parliament chapter, or this could be associated with the chapter of scheduled tribes and scheduled castes. Now they have asked about the details regarding this Committee of the Parliament. If you look at the options here, members of the committee are elected from both houses of Parliament. The chairperson of this committee is appointed by the chairman of Rajya Sabha. This is where things go wrong. Until here, everything seems to be right. Okay, but appointed by the chairperson of Rajya Sabha, here are where things go wrong. Because in actuality, he is appointed by the Speaker of Lok Sabha. This is where this option goes wrong. First option. 20 members are elected by the Rajya Sabha and 10 members by the Lok Sabha. It should have been the other way around. That means 20 members should have been elected by Lok Sabha and 10 members should have been elected by Rajya Sabha. So they have twisted so as to confuse you. Again, this goes wrong. No minister except for the Union Minister for Social Justice and Employment. If we have studied one common factor when it comes to the membership of these committees, parliamentary committee, you take any parliamentary committee, you know for sure that no minister, doesn't matter, there are no exceptions, no ministers can be made members of any parliamentary committees whatsoever, because ultimately the parliamentary committees are meant to enforce accountability upon the union executive. If you end up making a minister as a member of the parliamentary committees, it would compromise the accountability that has to be ensured on the other hand of the executive. So this again is wrong, because no minister, not even an exception, there is no minister whatsoever who is allowed that. Members are elected for a fixed term of 2 years from the date of which they enter upon office. All parliamentary committees, irrespective of when they are formed, the membership is only limited to not 2 but 1 year. So this again becomes false. This question was meant to confuse you after all. They wanted to test whether you have a deep understanding and whether you have a strong hold on your factual data. Right? So, since all of them are wrong here and the demand of this question was to choose the right answer, the answer here should be D. There is no correct statement here whatsoever. Moving on to the next question. This is where the UPSC played the other game by asking a question on zero FIR, which was based upon the BNSS 2023. Yes. This is a question I'm sure a lot of students would have not known. This is something the UPSC wanted to try and test whether you would be able to answer here or would you falter because of the information given. Yes, if you go through the zero FIR question, then you will understand that the only possible solution here could have been 2 with respect to zero FIR. Hence, the answer should have been D here. Alright? A very unconventional question, by the way. Nice. This was meant to confuse you. And this is something slightly difficult to answer as well. The next question, again, this was meant to confuse you and this was meant to check your factual ability, and I am sure a lot of students would have not prepared for such questions. These are considered to be the difficult questions in the UPSC's paper. Here what the UPSC has done, they have simply given you the names of 3 institutions or organizations, political organizations, and they have given the proportionate function and the controlling ministries associated with particular question. And they have asked you how many are correctly matched. Yes, if you would have been very carefully studying this question, the first statement here, the first match, Central Economic Intelligence Bureau, there is a term economic here, and the associated ministry given here is Home Ministry. We know economic and Home Ministry do not go well together. Just by sheerly using this logic, you could have eliminated this option altogether. As this should have been wrong. Whereas the second one, Serious Fraud Investigation Office. Yes, here it says to investigate complex corporate frauds. It says corporate frauds. Either this should have been wrong. If you believe this is right, then the Ministry of Finance, yes, investigating into the corporate frauds doesn't sit well, because you have a separate ministry called as the Ministry of Corporate Affairs to deal with the corporate frauds. So something was not matching here. Even if you did not know what the answer was, because the logic was not fitting well, you could have eliminated this option as well. Although it seems very easy studying here and speaking about this, but this is how the logic and common sense should have worked. CBI, the Central Bureau of Investigation. Yes, this here they have given about how to preserve values in the public life and ensure health of the national economy, etc. This is true, and indeed CBI functions under the Ministry of Personal Public Grievances and Pensions, which is directly under Prime Minister's office. So this is the only right match that has been placed here. So if you go according to this, they have asked in how many of the above rows have the given details been correctly matched. So the answer should have been only one here. Moving to the next one. Okay, this is a question: which of the following statements with respect to revamped Rashtriya Gram Swaraj Abhiyan is or are correct? It says the period of its implementation is from so and so. This is a factual based question. I'm sure even if you had studied about revamped Rashtriya Gram Swaraj Abhiyan, you would have not known from what period to what period its implementation would go on. This is where the UPSC plays the dirty game. They put in such facts that they know very well that you would not be able to recollect or recall, or you would have not come across these facts in the first place itself. Alright. The key objective of the revamped RGSA is to develop the governance capabilities of the Panchayat Raj institutions to develop on sustainable development goals. Alright, this is the option. The share of the central funding for the revamped RGSA is 100% of all the states and union territories. Here, the answer should have been only 1 and 3. Depending upon the fact. This is a fact-based question. Yes. So this was the discussion on this year's polity-based questions in UPSC Prelims 2026. If we look at the polity questions that have been asked this year, we know for sure that the questions were mixed. A few questions were easy, a few questions required your common sense and logic to work, and a few questions were surely unanswerable.